Holocaust for them. The piece that you see here in the corner is a representation of Gethsemane. When I started to look at this, the idea of creating a dialogue of suffering between the Holocaust and between the crucifixion, again, for me, emotionally, it was terrible. The idea that what the Lord had allowed me to have as a Gentile within this land was amazing. That I have full citizenship. I'm an Israeli and I'm also Canadian. It's an amazing story. It's a real miracle how I ended up getting this. Holocaust represents the years between 1948 and 1945. Because those that no longer had homes and had to go back to the same concentration camps, it was like going back to a grave. A place that had only represented death to you, you had to live within that place because you were a no person again, a no country, a no anything. And in a sense, the survivor has collapsed. He has the mantle again of the memory of the dead on him with the figure interwoven within the cloth. And the hands of the figure in the cloth go over the back, and the palms of the hands are turned up. Because in a way, I've heard this from survivors. It's almost like the dead are saying to those that survived, into your hands. We commend our spirit and we commend our memory. Because the majority of survivors are driven constantly to remember the dead. But within this piece, it almost represents burial for 3 years. And it's like, again, I'm an artist, so I can stretch it. It's like the identification in touching Jesus' passion was always the sense of there was death, there was burial, and then there's resurrection. And in a sense, from a place of identification, there was a crucifixion of the Jewish people. A violent, intended murder of them as the people. So there was death. The burial for them, the Second World War, the Holocaust ended in the spring of 1945. The declaration of Israel as a nation was the spring of 1948. Jesus was buried for 3 days. The Jewish people were buried for 3 years. Almost exactly to the day. Everything that the child is known, in a way only moments before, has been taken from him. And he's in the last stage of the killing process within the crematorium. On this side of the door, what you see is an exact copy of the crematorium doors from Birkenau, Auschwitz. The children that wrote the poetry within the book, I Never Saw Another Butterfly, almost all of them were killed within Birkenau. It's recorded historically. The ghetto that the children were put into was called Terezin. There were over 15,000 children that went through this ghetto. At the end of the war, it was a little over 100 that survived. And I looked at the poem and I thought, in the creating of this, what you see is the closed door of the crematorium. But what you also see is the arm of the child going through the door, and the hand of the child is clutching a small piece of ground just outside of the door. The small piece of ground symbolizes the land of Israel. The land becomes the butterfly that the child never sees. It belongs to him. He possesses it with his own hand, but he can't feel it and he can't see it, but it's his. Over the surface of this little piece of ground are olive leaves. Olive oil in the Old Testament always represents the anointing of kings and healing. And I looked at it and I thought, it's like the beginning of resurrection for them. Out of such a death, out of such a place of ash, somehow a nation is created 3 years after the end of it. It's unbelievable. But it's the butterfly. It's the sense of the anointing over them as a nation. For them to understand their anointing as a nation, they have to be a nation. They have to be a nation within their own geographical space to understand what is being poured out over them. And it's the beginning, in a sense, of their physical resurrection to the land.